If we look at the relationship between drives per game and turnover percentage on drives, again, Randall's had virtually the exact same production as Giannis. Cat, on the other hand, had the highest turnover percentage of anyone who averaged over 5 drives.
Whew. Listen, I told y'all, man, when you look at the bigger picture, and you look at the overall shape of the team, right? I feel like we got better. We got better, man. And welcome back to Mischief Entertainment, man. As you can see on the screen, we are reacting to why the Julius Randle trade makes perfect sense. Y'all see this smile on my face? We just got done reacting to the Vikings video. As you can see, same attire. Let's go Vikings, Minnesota Nation. We the North. You know, in other Minnesota sports news, Julius Randle has been traded for Karl-Anthony Towns. We also got Donte DiVincenzo in the first round pick. How do I feel about this? Before we go on in, at first, I ain't gonna lie, my nephew messaged me about it. We talked about it. We were both angry. I was just a little nervous for Minnesota to make such a big move like that, swapping out one of their key players. You know what I'm saying? But looking at the trade now, I feel like it was a very good trade for the identity of the T-Wolves and the culture they're trying to establish. I feel like Julius Randle is a better perimeter player, a better perimeter defender, and he's more agile than Cat. And that'll help us out a lot. Donte DiVincenzo is a 3-and-D sniper, okay? And I like having that on the team, okay? A catch and shoot sniper. Shout out Donte DiVincenzo. So when I look at the totality, right? Because we lost Towns, right? Towns is a better three-point shooter than Randle, but DiVincenzo is a better three-point shooter than Towns. You know what I'm saying? I believe only 2 people shot 40% in the three-point percentage in the playoffs last year, and it was Anthony Edwards and Donte DiVincenzo. Now they play on the same team. So, you know what I'm saying? As far as team building and the structure of the T-Wolves, look, I feel like we do look better. We still got Naz Reid. We still got Jaden McDaniels. This team is still deep, and we still have the best shooting guard in the NBA in Anthony Edwards. So I think it was a good trade, man. We got to convince Randle to stay, and we just got to continue on our grind. You know what I'm saying? We can make it back to the Western Conference Finals, and we can even make it to the NBA Championship, man. It's all in our hands, you know what I'm saying? But let's get to the video.
Just a glance.
Oh, yeah.
I'm sure
Make sure you like, comment,
people
subscribe,
viewed
and
this most recent trade as a complete head-scratcher for the Timberwolves. I mean, they're coming off a 56-win season that resulted in their first conference finals appearance in 20 years, then decided to trade their longest-tenured franchise player who was just named an All-Star for the 4th time. Not to mention, the All-Star they got in return seems to be a questionable fit to their roster at best, so it's easy to see why a lot of Minnesota fans aren't exactly thrilled. But what if I told you that this move actually makes perfect sense and could add a few years to their window as a title contender? Of course, it all revolves around Anthony Edwards. He's already the team's #1 guy, and he just turned 23 years old. So any talk about the Wolves competing for a championship has to start with how they plan to build around him and what he'll look like at the peak of his powers. I feel like it's almost unanimous that he'll one day be a solidified top 10, maybe even top 5 player, but because his game is predicated on getting downhill, isn't getting rid of a floor spacing big moving in the opposite direction? In the short term, that could be the case, and I'll dive more into that in a minute. However, this to me felt like it was a pretty obvious move for the future. See, Towns is under contract for the next 3 seasons, then has a player option in year 4, making $55 million a year on average. Randle, on the other hand, is under contract for 1 season with a player option in year 2, while making almost half of that at just $29 million.
Team building played a big part in this move, man. It really did.
A year. As for DiVincenzo, like Towns, he's under contract for the next 3 years, but is only making about $12 million. And what that means is that Minnesota has overwhelmingly more flexibility with these 2 guys on their books. When it comes time to pay Naz Reid or Nickeil Alexander-Walker, they'll have the money. If they want to improve their team on the margins with either a trade or free agency signing, they aren't under the same sort of handicaps. Again, when your goal is to maximize the window of a 23-year-old superstar, cap flexibility is one of the most important factors, and they've unlocked that with this move. With all of that said though, it's no secret that their window as a title contender is open right now, so it's still really important to look at the short-term effects. Going back to what I said earlier about Ant being a downhill player, the first place my mind goes to is spacing. Within that offense, Cat served as a stretch 4 next to the paint-oriented Gobert, and it worked because he's one of the deadliest catch-and-shoot guys in the league. Over the last 3 seasons, he made over 40% of his threes off the catch, and those came in a variety of ways, whether it meant spotting up, running the pick and pop, or just trailing the play in transition. Thanks to his height, he's able to shoot over the top of virtually any closeout, and as a result, he demands constant attention, which really opens up the floor. Randle just simply isn't anywhere near that caliber of shooter. As for his catch and shoot numbers over the last 3 seasons, just a measly 33% from 3, which lands him in the 21st percentile among all players. This calls into question how exactly the fit works between him and Gobert, as Rudy isn't exactly the greatest shooter himself. But I think we can draw some information if we look at who Randle's played with over these last few seasons. In 2021 and 2022, his big man rotation consisted of Mitchell Robinson, Taj Gibson, and Nerlens Noel. Outside of the occasional mid-range jumper from Taj, those guys were pretty exclusively limited to dunks. Then in the last 2 years, that rotation still had Mitchell Robinson, but the other 2 were Isaiah Hartenstein and Jericho Sims. Once again, we're talking about someone with a little mid-range game and 2 dunkers. The reason I think it's important to highlight these names is because the Knicks still produced some solid offensive numbers over these 4 years. The league's average during that time was an offensive rating of 114.2, and the Knicks were above average at 114.9, while leaning into more of a defensive identity. If we make the sample a little bit smaller and only look at the last 2 seasons with Jalen Brunson, those numbers look even more impressive. The league average went up to 115.5, and the Knicks jumped all the way to 118.5, good for 5th in the NBA. But remember, I'm more focused on how Randle coexisted with these non-spacing bigs. In almost 2,000 minutes next to Robinson, that number was 120.6. In 1,600 minutes next to Hartenstein, that number was 121.8. And in about 600 minutes next to Sims, that number was 116.8. In my opinion, there's more than enough evidence to suggest that Randle can produce really good offense next to a paint-oriented big. But if it's not coming from the three-point line, how exactly is he doing it?
Listen, man, I also think Randle's shooting gonna go up because he's playing on a team, in my opinion, with more and better three-point shooters. You know what I'm saying? Daniel shoots the 3, Reed shoots the 3, Nikhil Alexander shoots the 3, Mike Conley shoots the 3, DiVincenzo's gonna shoot the 3, Edwards gonna shoot the 3. So it's different because the Knicks got Josh Hart out there, and like he said, Isaiah Hartenstein and Mitchell Robinson. So as far as like shooters go, you know, Randle is higher on the list. When you're playing the T-Wolves, Randle isn't going to be that high on the list. As an effect, he should get more open three-point shots, which should help his three-point shooting ability. You know what I'm saying? But I'll let him continue.
His biggest offensive attribute is his presence as a downhill creator. At 6'8", 250, the guy's a bowling ball, and he pairs that with a decent handle and great body control to put a ton of pressure on the rim. He has the touch and versatility to be a great interior scorer, but even more importantly, he always has his head up to counter help defense as a passer. If we take a look at the drives per game of every player last season and how many assists they averaged out of those drives, Randle had some of the more impressive marks at 14 drives and about 1.5 assists. For reference, some of the closest slashing profiles to his came from Giannis and Brandon Ingram, who I'd argue is some pretty good company, and he even averaged more assists out of drives than his new teammate Anthony Edwards. As for Towns, he drove the ball a decent amount, but if he wasn't scoring, they rarely ever got anything out of it. And a big reason for that is turnovers. If we look at the relationship between drives per game and turnover percentage on drives, again, Randall's had virtually the exact same production as Giannis. Cat, on the other hand, had the highest turnover percentage of anyone who averaged over 5 drives.
Whew. Listen, I told y'all, man, when you look at the bigger picture, you look at the overall shape of the team, right? I feel like we got better. We got better, man.
That's because, despite having the size and speed, he has a very limited handle and poor body control. So if a defender cuts him off, all he can really do is plow through them, which results in a ton of offensive fouls. More importantly, though, is the fact that he has really bad tunnel vision. So if the defense collapses to protect the rim, he often ends up running into no man's land with no outlet. Randall will be bringing a completely different skill set to this offense through his ability to drive the ball and make plays. But this is also where people start to worry about spacing due to the assumption that an interior creator needs to have shooters around him in order to be maximized. I don't think that applies here for a few reasons. On one hand, you have his sweet spots as a finisher. Instead of trying to get around defenders, he oftentimes is looking to go through or over the top of them with soft touch on hooks, runners, or push shots from 5 to 7 feet out. On the other hand, you have his interior passing. Because he's putting pressure on the rim, he's often drawing shot blockers to the ball, and he's got the tools to consistently take advantage of bigs in
the... Rudy Gobert gonna look nice, man. Rudy Gobert, man. You as tall as a tree. You can just drop the basketball in there, man. You better, man, next season, man, Rudy.
Dunker spot, whether that's through lobs or dump-offs, which will then in turn maximize Gobert's game. In addition to these tools as a driver, whenever he isn't able to get into the paint or the defense is loaded up, he's also got a pretty nice mid-range game he can fall back on, and the big key here is that he's got different counters for different situations that still make him a threat to create even when his initial attack gets taken away. Another thing I'd like to point out is how many different ways he can set up these drives, whether it's an elbow isolation, when initiating an early offense, or even handling in the pick and roll. There are a ton of different ways to weaponize this downhill presence.
Ooh,
and that ability to create
finish over Chet. Julius Randle is 6'8". Chet got one of the longest wingspans in the NBA, man. That was a nice finish.
Not only brings a lot more versatility to that offense, it gets Ant off the ball more, which I think can really benefit both him
and... Remember how tired Ant was talking about how tired he was saying he was during last year's playoffs. As far as good as Cat is, setting up his own scoring opportunities isn't really what Cat does. You can have Ant out there on the court, right? And have Randall doing some of this ISO stuff and pick and roll ball with other people trying to get downhill, and you can put Ant in more catch and shoot situations, and he can be rested more, and they can kind of go on and off, you know what I'm saying? But Julius Randle is going to be a very good second option because he can do everything on the floor. He's a little bit undersized technically to be playing the power forward, but at the same extent in this new NBA, you need like a flexible power forward. He needs to be strong enough to guard bigger players, but also fast enough in case the other team is playing small ball lineup. And like they said, his offensive package is really a little bit of everything. You know what I'm saying? Inside, outside, mid-range, all of that.
And the team. Outside of the occasional Towns post-up or Conley pick and roll, Edwards hasn't really had the opportunity to play off of another creator, which I think takes away some of his game. The guy's a freak athlete and an explosive cutter, so having someone else to draw the defense will definitely lead to more plays like this, but even when standing on the perimeter as a stationary spot up, he can bring a lot of value. Over the last 3 seasons, he's actually been a more efficient catch and shoot guy than even Towns, making over 41% of his 3-pointers. And he pairs that with arguably the most explosive first step in the league, which enables him to just absolutely destroy closeouts off the cat. As for the rest of the team, I think their off-ball games can be enhanced by having another downhill creator too. Whether it's Conley, McDaniels, Alexander Walker, or Reed, all of these guys eat on catch and shoot opportunities, and Randle creates them at a very high rate. I actually want to focus on that depth for a second because I think the biggest thing that's being overlooked with this move is the bench minutes. There's no doubt in my mind that the team will stagger Randle and Ant's minutes, which means one of the two will be leading the backup units. I feel that will probably end up being Randle, and these units will provide him with more space than he's ever seen in his life. For starters,
talked about that. He's gonna be playing. Come on, let me let him talk. I'm gonna let him talk. But I said that.
He hasn't played with a big who could hit a consistent jump shot since Anthony Davis on the Pelicans, who was more of a mid-range threat than anything. Last year, Naz Reid shot 41% from 3 on 5 attempts a game, so we're talking about unmarked territory. Take your pick of any one of their wings to play alongside those two. Alexander Walker shot 39%, Ingles shot 43.5%, Dante, who I'll go more in depth on in a sec, shot 40%, Conley shot a scorching 44%, so I actually think that
shooters. When you look at the whole team, when you look at the depth, when you look at the fact that we still got the superstar in Anthony Edwards, and we're going to add Julius Randle, who is a downhill scorer who can do everything, which adds more perimeter defense. He's a hybrid defender. And we still got the defensive player of the year, Rudy Gobert. We still got the 6th man of the year, Naz Reid. Oh my God, man. Woo. Cooking.
Non-Edwards minutes are taking a massive offensive leap by replacing Cat with a more potent on-ball creator. As for minutes with the starting and potential closing units, I'm not nearly as confident. For everything I said about his fit with Gobert, how he applies more rim pressure and unlocks Ant as an off-ball weapon, the bulk of their offense still lies in the hands of Edwards as an on-ball creator, and that's where the fit with Randle feels a little bit funky. Sure, they can spot him up as an off-the-catch slasher, but that feels like something defenses can scheme for in the playoffs as he's not an efficient enough shooter to demand attention. That then, in turn, hurts the spacing and clogs up driving.
Listen, man, listen. How many of those players on the T-Wolves did he just say shoot 40% from the three-point line? At least. He's playing with shooters. He's not going to get that much attention. How did Josh Hart look last year playing with the Knicks when he wasn't getting attention from the three? Them numbers are going to increase. I believe in Randle.
Lanes. They could try using Randle as a screener a bit more, but he's never been a big pick and roll guy, and with Gobert positioned down low, he'd likely have to make a lot of tough reads in the short roll. He's not much of a lob threat himself, and Gobert too can struggle making reads in the short roll, so it doesn't make a lot of sense to put Randle in the dunker spot, and all that's to say, it'll take a lot of trial and error to find a consistent role for him away from the ball. I do think that raises some questions when it comes to fielding out great two-way lineups. Will they have to go smaller in certain situations and slide McDaniels up to the 4? Will Reed have to close games against defenses with great rim protection? Or will Edwards just be such an effective creator regardless that it doesn't even matter? There's lots of speculation and a lot of unanswered questions. As for a question that seems pretty easy to answer, that's where Dante DiVincenzo comes in, as I'm not sure I've ever seen a more seamless fit. It's as simple as this. 10 players attempted at least 8 threes a game last year. 3 of those 10 shot over 40%, and Dante was one of those 3. That's where pretty much all of his value as an offensive player lies. He'll be spotting up on the wing whenever one of Edwards or Randle is doing their thing, and I can assure you that he will improve the spacing of the team. So when you think of the totality of their team offense, did it get better or worse? Like I said, I feel confident in saying that they got better in the non-Edwards minutes. Considering that he played almost 41 minutes a game in the playoffs, does that really move the needle? They lost a critical floor spacer in Towns, but replaced him with a much more versatile on-ball creator who's better at punishing mismatches.
That's gonna be great in the playoffs, man. That's what we need. We need someone who can just go out there and be more consistent and stay out of foul trouble. And I believe in Randall, okay?
Be more important in starting and closing lineups than an elite three-point shooter, especially when considering that they added another elite three-point shooter to fill a different position. I think it's really interesting to think about, and I don't really have a definitive answer. For the defense, that isn't quite as compelling to me. Obviously, it's the identity of the team, and to me, there's just no way this move pushes them in any significant direction.
Listen, you just gotta... Okay, man. Who's the head coach of the New York Knicks? Tom Thibodeau. What is Tom Thibodeau known for doing? Coaching defense. What type of culture is Julius Randle coming from? A culture in which a team emphasizes defense. His defense is going to be swell. He's a better perimeter defender than Karl Anthony Towns. And I low-key want to say he's a better interior defender because I feel like he's tougher, he's stronger, he's quicker, okay? So yeah, I mean, listen. I get it. You gotta do your thing with the video. You know, you gotta uplift and then bring it down. You gotta uplift and bring it down. You know, I understand what you're doing. But at the end of the day, for every negative you got, I feel like I got a counter argument, and my counter argument is better than the negative. So let's go Randall. Let's go T-Wolves, man.
Randall's quicker on his feet than Towns, so when it comes to covering space or switching, I think they can do that a little bit better around Gobert. But they're also losing some size and rim presence with Towns, in addition to his post defense.
Julius Randle can do that. Julius Randle can
Remember, his strength against Jokic in the post was one of the biggest factors in them making it out of the second round, and although Randle's got a big body, he just simply can't replicate that series.
Very tough argument. But you see the scheme around what they did, right, was having a smaller big man guard him, so in case Jokic drived, right, he ran straight into Gobert, okay? Which was really tough, put him into a tough shot. And if he wanted to shoot a mid-range or a three, we were going to live with that for the most part, as long as we get a hand in his face. Julius Randle is going to be able to do that and assess that situation. He is. I believe so. I feel like the scheme that the T-Wolves invented on the MVP Nikola Jokic is very effective, and they will still be able to utilize that scheme. You know what I'm saying? We got a lot of big bodies. Jaden McDaniels is like 6'9", 6'10", okay? Even when we play small ball, because technically Jaden McDaniels is a small forward, and we can put him at the power forward, what's the average height of a power forward? It's like 6'10". He fits right in.
So to me, it's a pretty matchup-dependent question. Against teams like Dallas and OKC, you probably want the added speed of Randle. But against a team like Denver and maybe Memphis or LA, the added size and post defense of Cat could be the
He can do that. Cat didn't even jump on that one. Randle can do that.
Difference maker. The reason I didn't mention Dante is because I just view him as a solid defender who will fit right into their system in the same way any one of their wings do. He'll hold his own, he'll make some plays, but ultimately feels insignificant when talking about actually swinging the team one way or the other in any particular matchup. If you were to ask me right now whether or not the Wolves got better in the short term, I feel somewhat neutral, but the way they countered the Nuggets when paired with Cat's ability to space the floor probably makes me lean in that direction slightly. However, if you account for potential internal development from their young talent like McDaniels and Reed, some other new additions like Rob Dillingham and Terrence Shannon Jr., and everything I talked about with the contract situation, I feel that this move and the offseason as a whole has been a pretty big win for the Timberwolves. They unlocked more roster and cap flexibility. They could maybe even improve on their 56-win season, and they remain right in the center of NBA championship contention. If you enjoyed this breakdown, make sure to drop a like, subscribe, and turn my post notifications on to be first on more content.
Hey, you heard, man. You heard the man on TV. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe, and turn on your post notifications for both channels, man. Oh, man, look, we at the end of the video. Overall, I feel like y'all feel... y'all know how I feel about the Julius Randle trade. I think the T-Wolves can still win at least 50 games, you know, which makes them a top 4 seed in the West. I think they are still dangerous in the West. You don't want to run into the T-Wolves still. Um, Overall, I feel like we're a little bit better as a team. And then we still have the cap flexibility, trade flexibility, free agent flexibility, all of that. So, and overall, when you look at the shape of the team, I feel like we're still in a very good condition, you know. Still in a very good condition. We're at the same status as we were beforehand. We're in championship contention. You know what I'm saying? We're in that championship bubble. But if we're gonna win, it feels like we're gonna have to work for it, right? That was the truth before we traded for Randall, and it's the truth after we traded for Randall. You know what I'm saying? So, um, with that being the truth and the positives of everything else, I think it was a very good move, man. Shout out, you know, all Minnesota teams. Let's go T-Wolves. You know, let's go Vikes. You know, let's go Twins. You know, let's go Lynx. You know, let's go Minnesota FC. That's our soccer team. You know, let's go, man. But that's the end of the video, man. So make sure you like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff, man. We out.